Welcome to Puzzling Company, your home for at-home puzzles and mysteries. Here are your hosts, Jared and Zach.
What's up, everybody? Jared here, coming to you live from Puzzling Company, but we're not just Puzzling Company coming to you from our office. We are now Puzzling Company coming to you live from the Deadbolt Mystery Society studio.
Oh.
And that is super exciting. We have partnered up with them. They are going to be our studio sponsor for the next 5 months, and we are so pumped to be working with them because we really enjoy their products, as we know many of you do as well. So be listening in on episodes. They'll be dropping some discounts. And if you haven't played a Deadbolt game before, you need to. They're awesome. We really enjoy their narratives. It's just good quality gaming.
Mm-hmm.
But today we're staying in a similar vein. Zach, what are we talking about today?
Ooh, okay. We are going to be talking about Murder & Co.
Oh, yeah.
And we are playing their first game, if I'm not mistaken, called, well, technically I think the game under their thing is Snow Angel.
Yes. Hang with us. We'll come right back to talk about everything involved with our experience. Hey friends, Jared here asking you to join our Patreon community. Monthly support is a great way to help us in our mission of growing the at-home puzzle and mystery world. So check out our show notes or go to patreon.com and search Puzzling Company and find the membership level that's right for you. Welcome back, everybody. Again, here, Puzzling Company in the Deadbolt Mystery Society studio, talking to you today about Murder & Co. Now, before we get into what we really enjoyed about this game and where we felt like there was some room for improvement, I feel like we kind of need to lay some context for this because it is a murder game. Think Unsolved, A Killing Affair, A Hunt a Killer. It is that style of game, but it differs a little bit. Zach, do you want to talk a little bit about how it's a little bit different?
Yeah, with Murder & Co., I would say what is a little unique about it is that, there is a lot of narrative to the game, which is very good. For you to get the full experience, there are a lot of puzzles and deciphering that you can do. I will say, though, that if you wanted to, you could technically speed through the quote-unquote problem solving of the game, like with the major story.
Like the deductive reasoning,
correct.
Right?
You could go through and eliminate suspects, figure out who did it, stuff like that. But it's kind of like Root of All Evil in terms of there are like other puzzles you can do that give you more narrative background or help solve small mysteries that you're trying to solve along the way.
I think that's a good way of saying it because each episode opens up with something that you have to solve.
A clear objective.
Yeah. And in our experience, that objective in some cases can be found in 5-10 minutes. Like
you can find it pretty quickly. I will say there is like a clear objective. So like once you kind of figure out part of the pattern to it, you can like go look for it.
Yes.
But there is a lot in this game that I think is very rewarding if you actually do the other puzzles.
Oh, I totally agree. I don't want people to speed through it because I think they'd miss what this game is all about.
Agreed.
But we just kind of wanted to set that frame because that was very different for us. The other games, you spend a lot of your time working and reasoning and searching to get to that. In this game, it kind of invites you, I totally agree, into a little bit of that like root of all evil. How deep into the narrative do you really want to go? And we're going to put some puzzles in your way of that type of thing. But I want to jump now into talking about what we enjoyed and what we felt like there's some room for improvement in this game. So Zach, why don't you kick us off on that?
Yeah, the first thing I think we really enjoyed about the game was the storytelling.
Yes.
I thought the way they presented the case at hand was well done. To kind of give some context of how we played this game, we did receive the first box, like in person, like we had the physical box, and we played the other 5 chapters online through the digital aspect. And I thought it was really well done, like how they present the characters that are involved. There's, I obviously am not going to tell you anything spoilery, but there is like the main character who's Piper and her death. So, spoiler, she dies.
Such a ruiner.
I know. I'm sorry. But what I think is really interesting is they bring in all these characters and they don't do what I call as a classic move of putting up like photos of everyone and giving you like
Yes.
the detail oriented, like, oh, here's like a list and you can just look at them. They give you, what they do is they give you the names and they give you the perspective as you're helping another detective.
Yes.
So they kind of, she's like, gives you like her notebook that's encrypted to some degree and see stuff in there. But then you can figure out what people look like through other things. So like the newspaper, you know, through a picture online, stuff like that. And that gives you more, like, because I found that really intriguing because it made me think of what these characters kind of looked like for a little bit and imagine in my own head. But then I could visually see them to make more sense of like certain clues or hints about like finding or following a character, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think they just positioned all of that very well because you're absolutely right. In all of the other crime games that we've played, they're trying to put you into the role of like a detective. And sure, so they're going to give you a file on every suspect. But in here, in the storyline here, we're kind of just playing ourselves and we're smart. And the person that we're working for isn't even on like a full on detective.
The person you're working with, her name's like Susan Gladstone. She's technically like a police officer for the campus.
Yes.
For like the college that you're at. But then her husband is the actual detective working on the case. So that's how she like gets some info, but she basically does her own detective story without being an actual detective. So it makes sense why you have very specific info, but she's been like scavenging for it. You're not like clear.
Yes.
You don't get a literal file that goes like, here's everything the detectives know.
Right.
You have to make that
and I like that. I liked playing me and not, like you said, I didn't even realize it until we were talking about this after the game, but we didn't have their photos. Yep. And that made the concept of like who's a suspect a little more fluid. Mm-hmm. And there were some good things along the way to kind of help you narrow that down because most episodes are about who can we eliminate as a suspect. But just on a lot of different levels, the storytelling was, in terms of the crime stories that we have, this might be my favorite story.
It's definitely one of their up there. I really like, one of the things I always find really intriguing with this style of genre is there's the classic, like, you know who did it all along, or they do some, like we've played a game before, or like in general, I've seen like movies and stuff where they do the whole like big plot twist where you learn like a character was involved that you would never guess, right? You're like, okay, there was no idea I would have known Jimmy did it because clearly Jimmy wasn't introduced or very minor.
Yes.
And there really wasn't any like feedback. But in this game, I will tell you everyone is worse than you think they are. Or like, you know, you learn about the secrets everyone has. People are worse than they appear to be. But then I really like is that when you do solve it, the person that did it, you knew clearly would have done it.
And not too early on either.
They make it where it is obvious that you can know that person would have some intention, but it was smart that I had to know by box 6 that like I had to confirm it. Like I had a really good idea. I knew who did it.
Yes.
But then there was like no way to confirm it until box 6. And I was like, oh, that's the clear thing I'm missing.
Right.
Yeah.
The way I would describe it, and I think this is appropriate to the genre, is instead of like beating you over the head, like blunt force trauma killing you, what I think Murder & Co. does really well is they stick the knife in you and then they slowly turn it. Like that's how they tell their narrative. And each new episode is a small little turn of that knife to where we're still talking about the same narrative, but things maybe aren't the same before. It's just like a slow kill.
Yeah.
And I really, really like that. And the other thing that I thought they did really masterfully is like they tell the story indirectly so well. There's one incident that, like, I'll be very vague here, but you're working through the main character's calendar.
Yes.
And then you have all of these other, what seem like scattering things. I just so vividly remembered thinking like, oh, this is what happened. And then I looked at that and I was like, oh no, but it was this. Like the way that they allow you to connect the dots through their storytelling was some of the best that I've played through narratively. That I just really, really enjoyed it. This story has kind of that like classic college campus fraternity, sorority feel. And I'm a sucker. Like I love watching that type of stuff. Mm. So the story I just thought was told really, really well over the 6 episodes. And I think we also have to give them a shout out too, because like you said, we played the last 5 online. It was not my favorite. I generally like having the physical thing in front of me, but the story was just so compelling, in my opinion, that didn't seem to matter.
Yeah.
Zach, what else did we really like?
Yeah. So one of the big things that Murder & Co. I think advertises that I've seen on their social media is, and one of their selling points is that you get a gift with each of the boxes. I wanted to say that I agree that the gifts are actually very like well thought out
Yes.
in terms of that they make sense in terms of the theming, or they're very just nice gifts. They're not like something just random that I'm like, okay, I clearly didn't need to keep this. So like as an example, we got like something very specific. I don't want to spoil it. What we got in our first box.
We got things that mattered directly to the investigation. And,
correct.
And other things that are just good to have as a mystery solver.
Yeah, they're useful for doing other things that we like what we do normally.
Yes.
So it was really thoughtful. Like when we saw it, I was like, wow, that looks good quality and it can be useful.
Because most box sets are giving us something, right? Like I'm looking at some of the scattered things, and I'm not trying to say that I don't appreciate that, but it feels like this team went out of their way and probably spent a little bit more money to give you some nicer, more intentional things.
It is also different too, because I think the big thing that I appreciate about them and what I expected is that that's a selling point for Murder & Co.
Yes.
So it has to live up to like the expectation that you're like, we're giving you a good gift with the box. Because if it wasn't, it would be bad. It would be a room for improvement, right?
Yes.
But it's not. The gift you get, while other games we play come with the gift, but it's not expected. So like I obviously appreciate those as much. You know, it's just like the expectation for a company who's going like out of their way to be like, you're getting a gift with this and it's going to be good. It has to meet that expectation.
I think that's fair because we always say like we judge you on what you give us, not what you don't give us. And they said there was going to be a gift, and I wish we would have gotten to play all 6 boxes.
Some of the other gifts in the other boxes were cool. Yeah.
And it was funny looking at them digitally and kind of like sorrowfully being like, oh, I wish we would have. I wish we would have waited. But that's where they're at as we kind of transition into our room for improvements. If you want to play this as of the day that we're recording this, which is the 28th of January, they only have 2 boxes, physical boxes, moving out from their Kickstarter. You can play the whole thing online right now if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But their physical boxes are only 1 and 2 of the 6 that make the entire Snow Angel series.
Correct. And then I think they're working on potentially another story. Or I know on their website they have like games that are coming in the future.
Yes.
But they are not out.
And I think we talk about that during the interview, so I think they'll give us a little more
cool
info on that. But yeah, overall, like high points to just kind of summarize: killer narrative, really great gifts. But I want to transition now into room for improvements because I personally felt like there were numerous things that went wrong during our experience that are not, they're big deals, but they're not hard to fix.
Correct. They are very much like, and I know I think for Murder & Co., this is like a very new thing for them.
Yes.
So this is their first creation.
First thing they've ever made.
So we do have to judge it as equally. We can't be, but it is fair to say that the things that are on here are not deal breakers for me, but they are things that like would clearly improve my experience. And they seem like, from the people that they are, I'm very excited to see what they do with these.
They'd be deal breakers for me, but I think we'll talk about it a little bit. I think they're going to be changing some of these things. Yeah. Kick us off.
So the first thing that was in our room for improvements would be the hint system for the game. So to explain it as it is right now, how it works is that when you are playing the main box, so let's say you're in box 1, you get like an objective letter that kind of explains the narrative up to the point that you're at, and then tells you, hey, if you want hints, here's the password for the hint page, and then go to it. So then you go to the hint page, you put in the password, and then when you open it up, it is a single photo. Now, on that single photo is small bits of information that help you solve some of the more difficult deciphering and puzzles that are in the game, or help you make connections that's important.
Yes.
But that's it. It is a very, I'm going to be honest, some of them are kind of just vague pictures of information that is in the box.
Very limited. Nothing tiered.
Correct. It is basically on you to be like, so we would open up some of them and I'd be like, okay, I get what they're trying to point at and it could have been useful, but I knew all this.
Yes.
And I just need them to tell me like, hey, I need them to give me another hint, another tiered hint that goes like, hey, look at this big arrow pointing at this. You should do this when I needed it. And it didn't have that. Because
you'll also hear the creators talk about this, but they were trying to make something crimey that was a little more difficult.
Yeah.
And I think in their estimation of creating something more difficult, they weren't really willing to just give the answers away.
Sure.
But it's our personal belief that you should have leveling or tiered hint systems, and then you should also have solutions, because we are just huge advocates of letting people play the game that they want to play it.
Mhm.
And as a creator, I know sometimes you kind of want to make people play a game a certain way, but I think that leads to frustration. Whereas if they have the opportunity to know or not know, then they are self-regulated instead of regulated by what you have. But Zach and I were even stuck on multiple episodes, went to the hints, and we're like, I'm not getting anything from this. Like
So it has-
nothing more than I already know.
Correct. Because the issue is like we knew like we would solve all those things to a degree, but would be stuck on specifically the objective,
Yes.
which then it really a lot of the hints don't give you clear objective help. It's more like helps you decipher specific info. Some of it was for the main narrative, but it's just so vague that you would never be like, okay, like I was like, I knew all that, or it wouldn't feel useful at the time. Like, I'm like, okay, that's interesting, but I don't need to work on that. I'm trying to like solve this. And I agree with you. People just play differently. Like, Jared and I played this game differently.
Yes.
Jared is very much more of like keeps me in line in terms of doing everything. And I'm very much a person that I enjoy the solving part of a game. So I was like rushing just to basically solve the objective every time. Not saying like the other parts of the game were not as enjoyable. It's just not my style. So, I was
the
like
murder games are not your styles. Yeah.
In terms of like, I just like, I'm more analytical and just want to solve things back. So I just go puzzle to puzzle.
Yes.
So I was just focusing on that. But Jared was like, hey, like, wait, help me do this cipher. And I'm like, no, I want to like, I'm trying to figure out who did it, dang it.
I'm just so lost in the narrative. I'm like, what did you think about this? And it doesn't have anything to do with like the suspect that we're trying to eliminate. But Zach is just like gung ho. And we even played once at my house and I could tell he was just so in the zone. And I was like, no, I just want to know everything about like this and that. And did you decode that yet? And it came to a little bit of a point. He's like, no, I haven't done that. I'm working on this. I'm like, okay, man, like don't worry about it. Like just keep going.
Yeah, like I said, it's only, and I feel unfortunate about that. It's just the murder games. I think I've been public about it. They're just not my style of games.
Yeah,
but they do a lot of really cool things.
They do a lot of really cool things. I want to talk now about the second thing because this is more of like a pet peeve of mine. I would hazard a guess that it's not universally everybody feels this way, but there is, in my opinion, in this game, way too much decoding. Think over-processed puzzle. And I won't ruin what happens, but the primary Susan, who you're working
Susan
with,
Gladstone, yeah.
She is leaving you hidden notes in every single episode. And in every single episode, it's the same exact cipher. It's quite a lot to decipher. It's very time consuming and it doesn't iterate at all, episode to episode. And that for me was just frustrating because a lot of the other quote unquote puzzling that you're doing aside from the deductive reasoning in this game is code breaking.
Yeah.
And it's not that they didn't use the code breaking well. It's just that every time you did it, it was a lot.
Yep.
It was very time consuming. And the payoff usually ended up being the narrative and not the primary objective of the episode.
Yep.
So I think decoding is fine, but it was heavy handed is what it was in this episode, to the point where in episode 5 and 6, I honestly was like, do we need to do this? Like, do we need to crack the cipher that she's using in order to fully understand anything? Because it just became super cumbersome. And again, I think some people could, break Caesar ciphers and all of that for all Kingdom Come. I think a majority of people are in the same boat with me, that some is good, but more is not great in terms of that type of stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, Zach. I think that's just maybe a personal hotspot for me.
It's for both of us. I definitely I did the ciphering of the journal for the first 2 or 3 boxes, and then I stopped doing it. Not in terms of that I didn't think it was worth doing. I just focused on other things.
Yes.
Because I figured out, at least how I was playing, how the game was going to function and what I really needed to solve the main objective. And you were the one doing most of the side things anyway. So I basically just let you do it. And I was just like, I'm just going to focus on what I want to do.
Sure.
But yeah, it's a thing that it's not bad. Like the deciphering is not bad. It's just too much.
It's too much. Yeah. It was good because they tried to use it narratively.
Yeah. I mean, narratively, it made sense.
Narratively, it made sense, like what they were trying to do, but it just came off as very overwhelming. Yeah. I just think decoding has a time limit on it. And at a certain point, I think it's different for everybody. It just becomes homework. And that's what I felt like. What's the last thing we felt like there was some room for improvement?
So Our last room for improvement were some errors we had with the tech. So I'm not going to explain too much about how it fully works because I don't want to explain like the narrative. I guess I can tell you a little bit. So what I will explain is that how the game functions, right, is that you get the box or you do the digital line. It explains the objective, and then you are emailing the character, Susan Gladstone. So they give you her email and they go like, hey, you're going to put this in the subject line to address it. And then in the body of the email, you're going to put the answer. If that's, like if the question was who can be eliminated, who did it, who didn't do it, whatever the question is asked, you put it in there. Now, I learned very quickly that it is an automated system. There is an automation for telling you that you are incorrect, and there's one for when you are correct. What the error was is we found out there were some problems with how it worked. We would send in an answer, and if we were correct on one of the boxes specifically, that I remember this, we were not getting a response back at all. There was no or yes. So we were like, okay, that's weird, because in the first box and the second box, when we asked yes and no, we were getting responses quickly. Like, yes, I would say like, oh, we think, I'm going to make up a name, Steven did it. Or Steven was like safe. He was like not there.
Yeah, Steven's innocent.
So I'd say like Steven didn't do it, and I would get an immediate response like, yeah, we also agree Steven didn't do it. And you're like, cool, you move on. Or I'd get it wrong and I'd be like, oh, Jesse did it or didn't do it, whatever. And they'd be like, no, we don't think it was that. Maybe you should keep looking again. But then in the third box, I believe, is when we had the issue that we knew who didn't do it. We put in the answer. We got no response, no yes or no. And I was like, that's weird. So then I kept sending no responses of the other characters to test it. So then I sent every other character and gotten like, no.
We even started in saying like, Zach is innocent.
Well, I put in, I told the creators this, but one of my responses was Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, just to see if it would take any answer. And it said no. So I was like, that's weird. So then we did contact the creators about it, and they told us like, oh, it was supposed to. Like, yeah, they were error. They were really
great.
nice.
They were really great on that side, but that happened on multiple.
We had that happen on that. And then
I think it happened 3 times total.
Yeah, one of them was technically my fault, but you could argue that like that's just like a player-friendly point of view,
right?
But it's also me and technically not following the instructions exactly how the game wanted you to do it, or how the email system wants you to do that.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And then in the earlier episode, there was just a lot of errors, like grammatical things. There was a map that had like a important location on it.
That it was missing the location.
But it didn't show it where it was on the map. But I want to transition to talking about why I appreciate the creators of this game, because they sent us a super early copy of this game and then didn't realize that we didn't get the updated. They sent us the updated.
Correct.
To where a lot of these. Now, by the time that most of you are listening this is what's encouraging to me, is I think that the tech will be fixed. And I think they'll have a hint system based on our conversations. And you may listen to this episode and go, none of this makes any sense. That's great. That's a great creator and creators in this case, in my opinion. But we're just giving it based on when we played it. And this process was, I think we even received like a pre-Kickstarter version of this. But I think that'll be exciting for a lot of our listeners to, I still think you should give this game a chance, pick it up, especially if you like murder. We're going to talk about some fun stuff in the midsection that I think will be appealing for a lot of people that we didn't really feel like was necessarily a like or a room for improvement. But I'm on board with the creators, because I'm on board with any creator that is willing to take criticism, to grow, and to continue to love their customer base by making a better game.
Yeah, and for a first version to have like a lot of things that worked really well and some that didn't, and to take those like criticisms are like, and they were really like, when we talked to them, they were awesome about like listening to it, and clearly you could tell they love it. So I'm very excited to see what the next iteration.
People love that product that are growing. I'm in.
Yep.
I'm in. I'm on board. Well, that is really going to wrap us up here for section 1. Hang out. We got Puzzle to the People coming at you next.
Solve puzzles, write reviews, win prizes. It's time for Puzzles to the People.
Puzzlers, we need your help. We need you to leave us a 5-star review so that more people can find us. It doesn't matter if you prefer the black and electric green of Spotify or the medley of pink and blue at Apple. Go to wherever you listen to this podcast, click that 5-star rating, and let's grow our community together.
Welcome back to Puzzling Company. We are back in the Deadbolt Mystery Society studio. We are now in the section that is called Puzzles to the People. In this section, it's madness. I'm just going to call it that. Jared presents me with many different options of forms of this section, but what I figured out that it's either one of two things. One, we cover reviews, information about the game, and we kind of discuss like the review system. We kind of just debate it. Or Jared brings up an idea or a thought that is related to either the game or the puzzling community as a whole. And we discuss like a back and forth. He'll ask me questions about it and I'll try to answer it.
And we are talking about the latter today because I would love to hear what other people have thought about this game, but not that many people have gotten the opportunity to play this yet because it's fresh off of Kickstarter, like it's being fulfilled as we speak. So today we're going to talk about something that we've touched on in other episodes, but haven't really dug into. And this is the perfect game to do that because the ladies that create this game pride themselves on that. And that is realism. Realism in the game. They went above and beyond, in my opinion, to try to make the characters, the language, everything in this game feel like this actually happened. And what I want to start this conversation on is, would you agree with that for Murder & Co.? And then we'll go from there.
Do I agree that they went all out on realism?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was very realistic. Like the characters, how they worked between each other was realistic. I thought how they did certain things was real. I really enjoyed that. Like, I mean, they had actors that they like took pictures of. They clearly acted in the photo. You know, like it was very clear that this was not like a mysterious case where like nothing made sense. Or like, you know, there's like some murders that you see that is very rare where it's like, okay, you know, when you see most crimes, you're like, okay, it's people usually closest to them.
Yes.
In most cases. You're like, okay, it's clearly that like, it's clearly the brother or the dad or the mom or the, you know, whatever you want to say, because they had something going on when you like really look into it. And it's rarely like they randomly got swept up by something.
Yes.
Right. Generally, there are those cases, but they went above and beyond and being like, everyone that you suspect that could have killed Piper in Snow Angel that we played, every one of the suspects could have clearly done it. It was very real. Like I knew any of them could do it. So then when you find out who did it, it made complete sense. You weren't like, oh, that's really weird that like it was Jimmy, the like character who shows up for 1 second in the game. I knew like everyone made sense of how they would have interacted with each other. I knew why, if one of them did it, they did it. It worked out really well in terms of like, it seemed like a real crime.
It did. And the other things that made it feel real were there was one of the things you should know about this game is this is for adults.
Yeah.
This is not a child-friendly game. It is marketed as 18 plus. They use we'll call it flowery language.
Yeah.
And they don't spare you from that.
Nope.
The pictures feel very accurate. I wouldn't call anything in this game like overly gory.
Yeah, it's not like the like murder scene shows like
right,
like crazy blood or just insane things.
But it's all very authentic, and to me, that realism amplified the narrative.
Yep.
To make it feel like, is this true crime? Is this really unsolved crime? Like the realism, in my opinion, helped with kind of the immersion of what was going on. And I think they do some other things, but that's my next question to you is what specifics in the game really stood out to you to say like, they're trying to achieve this adult game through realism?
Language was used, very much tried to describe that. I think a lot of like the evidence that you get is pretty real in terms of like more adultish is like the emails that are used are like pretty realistic in terms of like this is a college student talking to another college student or like in an email system or like a professor talking to a student.
Yes.
I thought that was pretty realistic in terms of the language that would be used between those two characters. I thought the photos that were used were pretty realistic in terms of like, I mean, there's literally one of them at a party where there's like drugs on the table. Like it looks like they were smoking like
and some other illicit activities.
Correct. Like clearly it looked like they were at a frat party and they went all out making sure that it looked like they were at an actual frat party. You know, clearly there was alcohol, there was people partying, stuff like that. I mean, there's literally a paid person that shows up at the party. You know, it's like, okay. I mean, there's not many kids, but there's I guess I can say it. There's a stripper at the party. I mean, obviously it's not like explicit, but I mean, you clearly know that like they tell you that that's the character.
We can easily say there's nothing sexually explicit.
Correct.
In this game.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, it's pretty real. Like, I mean, there are things that go on this college campus in the story that makes sense with like a college campus.
And that's what I want to dig into, because that was one of the big takeaways that I had was they're touching on very real social issues throughout this game. Some of them are uncomfortable, but what I thought they did a really good job of is kind of shaping and world building off of the world as we see it now. This game takes place on a college campus, and that's what I did for 6 years before I got into the escape room world. Is I was an administrator on a college campus, and it probably is why I love these games so much, this kind of story. But the issues that are being very subtly put into the narrative here are happening on college campuses everywhere. Like there's undertones of rape culture. There's undertones of rampant drinking, and there's
sexual assault,
like promiscuity of
hazing, for the fraternity life, like, sorority life.
And the game doesn't spare you from those things, as well as some other like deeper social issues that I don't want to ruin, that if we did talk about would ruin this experience for you.
Do that.
But I appreciated all of that because it was very clear that they were trying to paint an actual picture of what our world is like right now, but they weren't cramming any position on a social issue down your throat.
Oh, agreed. They weren't like making you choose a side. It was just presenting the issue at hand and being look at it.
It was context is at the end of the day what it was. And that made the game feel real, because it would be really easy, in my opinion, to keep certain elements of this game that would maybe be more comfortable and less, in some cases, even political.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They put it all in there. They painted a true picture. And that realism was gripping because it made the story more authentic, in my opinion.
Agreed.
And I like that a lot. Can you think of some other games that we have played where you felt realism?
Yeah, so there are a lot of games that I think have a realistic touch to them in terms of what they try to present. Even if it's not just narrative, but like how the puzzling works, I think is interesting. So I have three that I'd say I have off the top of my head. I think Madman and Heroes. So they do a fictional take on realistic events and then present the history of that event.
Yes.
So I think the realistic part obviously is the event that happened in real life. So like one, I think talked about like World War I or World War II.
Yes.
Kind of like discussing that.
Underground Railroad,
stuff like that. The other one, my second one, I would say is Root of All Evil.
Interesting, because that's I could see that.
Well, my reason why I think Root of All Evil is specifically the storytelling within the journal of Root of All Evil is it made it seem very realistic that I was reading someone's thoughts.
And it's also based on a real place.
Correct. Yes. There is a realistic element to it. The last one I would say is actually Maddox's Lost Treasure from Society of Curiosities.
Really?
You know why? They have one of the only puzzles that I've ever done that I questioned if it was real or not. That's so realistic that I questioned the game's fundamental.
So you're like adapting your definition of realism to almost bring in like super immersive elements, like because what you're talking about with Maddox is like an ARG element.
Correct. Yeah, I mean there is realism could be more like I get like what type of term you're trying to use for realism in terms of like how Murder and Co. did it. I just mean like I'm adapting it a little bit because specifically the way that some games can immerse me so much that I think it is real is very crazy for something that isn't.
Yes.
And like I said, Murder and Co. did some great things with its realism, but specifically Maddox Lost Treasure from Society of Curiosity still has one of the only moments that I've ever had where I just did something wrong.
Where you question reality.
I questioned if I spent real money or that I was going to.
I think that's fair. No, I think that's really, really fair. I agree with you on the history side. Like even thinking through like some of the real places that games visit. Like I think of some of the Enigma Fellowship games.
I was going to say those do that, yeah.
They do that as well. And you have this opportunity to pull and push on something that we see with our eyes. Now, I'll be honest. I think I prefer like a more imaginative fantasy world, like something that I couldn't experience on the regular. That would be my preference. But I just thought, especially with Murder and Co. today, like it just felt like the right medium and the right opportunity to do that. And I think that's just the nature of where we are in today. Like murder is this real thing, crime is this real thing. It's all around us. We hear about it on the news every day. So why not push into the reality of that and not spare your audience from that? I just like that. Now, the inverse of what I was thinking in that is like, I felt like it would have been easy to go down like a 50 clues route, but that is like fiction to the shock degree. Like that's not realism, but they don't spare you from anything.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the realism that I'm personally latched onto is like you told a really authentic story and you didn't spare anything that you could have to maybe make me feel more comfortable.
I can't believe that you don't think that trying to slay the spirit of King Leopold III by sacrificing souls to defeat him is unrealistic.
Let's not get too philosophical here, because in 50 Clues, that was definitely real for a certain character that we were synced with.
That's true.
So what is real? What is reality, Zach?
It's true. I have that card on my desk. I know what reality is now.
I question that with you quite often.
Yes.
Any closing thoughts as we wrap up the second section? Just thoughts on realism. Should it be pursued more? And if you do it, how should you do it?
That's a hard question. I'm definitely going to give my opinion, but I am not an expert in this field. So please don't be too harsh with me, people. I agree that I think realism should be used more. The hard part with realism is I feel like it has to make sense with the game that is being played. I think it is very easy to do that specifically with the murder style games because it's easier. That is the right way. I mean, there's a difference. I think it's easier to make a general story about those, but I think it's harder to make a really good story that feels real, but also is like a murder that isn't already an actual murder.
Yes. That's a good point.
Just because I know, like, you can get a lot of inspiration from just a real murder and then change the names, and then that's very easy. But it's not like I don't think we've played any games that have really done that. But they've all been pretty creative in making their own narrative.
Yes,
that feels pretty real. I do agree that in certain games that I enjoy the fantasy aspect more, just because I think it is something that is more intriguing to explore the unknown or something that I can't experience. And try to like visually see myself do that or like get immersed in that because that's really cool. But yeah, I think specifically like with Murder and Co, I think they did a fantastic job with the realism. It made me like think about certain subjects that, you don't get pushed at you every day normally, and really look at it and be like, wow, that's good or bad, in its own context. And then that's the fun debate of looking at those topics and discussing them.
I agree. I think it is an underused mode of immersion.
Yeah. I also agree with your statement earlier. I think one of the most intriguing things is when someone can create that topic without making you choose a side.
Yeah. And kind of like invite you into being a judge, but not being judgmental.
Correct.
Because and that was fun. We had so many conversations during the game about like, oh, so-and-so, there's such a so-and-so, or man, I hate so-and-so. Like, the realism of the environment allowed us to think the characters were real, and thereby do what we do on a daily basis when we're watching TV, like enjoy the character, hate the character, judge the character. And that was a lot of fun. And honestly, I think that's what people like about true crime, murder mystery shows, and reality TV. Yep. Like it's the opportunity to invite yourself in, but have no consequences based on that. And that's a very fun aspect of realism. In terms of people using it, I'd like to see more of it, but I agree. You just have to be careful in that balance. I don't think it needs to be the entire scope of a game, but when you do ground a part of your game in reality, what's nice about that is it does give your player relatable ground to then kind of create a infrastructure for the imaginative place that you're taking them. Yep. If that makes sense. Like if you tell me we're in New York, boom, in my mind already is the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building. It's right. The bays, the other skyscrapers, other type of touristy events. And I've got that. So now that you have that, you almost relinquish yourself a little bit from building the world, but then you have the ability to dive further into that. And that's what I think that's what I want to see a little bit more of with people who make that decision. Again, not advocating for realism in every single game, not advocating for it as like the core tenet of a game, but when it's used, I think people could lean into it a little more and either let it do its work for them or allow it as kind of a catalyst for sucking us into something deeper because we already know, because it exists, this, and that, like the pyramids.
Yep.
Like something like that. Great starting point. We already know what those look like. Okay, now let's go from there. That is going to really wrap us up for our second section. We have questions for creators coming at you next.
There are some awesome people who make the puzzles we love to solve. This is Questions for Creators.
Jared here again, asking you to keep your eyes peeled this month for your chance to join our email list. Signing up will grant you access to our Puzzles Almanac, which will be emailed to you quarterly. This almanac houses the latest in games, reviews, and discounts to all the games that you love. Additionally, anyone that signs up will automatically get 3 free digital games to enjoy with your friends and family. Keep those eyes peeled, Puzzling Company. Welcome back to Puzzling Company. Here we are in Questions for Creators, getting to know them here in the Deadbolt Mystery Society studio. Again, if you've never played one of those games, got to give them a try. It's totally worth your time and money. But here in this section, we love to get to know our creators. And today we've got not 1, not 2, but we've got 3 wonderful, awesome people that we really enjoyed getting to know, spending some time with, and talking about their games. This was another one of those conversations that went well beyond what you will hear. We're just really honored to get to know these ladies and to exchange ideas and talk about what's going on with them. We won't waste any more time. Let's get to know them. All right. So if you all will please tell us your names, your individual stories, and the origin story for your game and company.
So my name is Melanie Monroe. I am a writer, and I used to live in Nashville. I was a singer-songwriter in Nashville. And I met these ladies when our kids were in school. Christian, I met when my kid was in preschool, and Taylor in elementary school, and we became friends. And that's how we got started, being friends anyway.
I'm Taylor Stanley. I'm an actress. I have a background, a little bit of writing. I went to school for writing as well. Met Melanie in elementary school, and then met Christian through Melanie, and we became friends and just wound up bonding over our love for true crime and murder and all things dark and creepy.
My name is Christian Davidson, and I am a writer and a theater director. And I think you know how we met. So how we started this game was when a group of us decided to get together during the pandemic via Zoom to play games together. And after doing that for a while and really enjoying each other's company, we came across this idea of like, how could we do this better? Threw it back and forth. And we felt so excited about, the potential that we brought as individuals to a project like this. And it sort of just blossomed into Murder & Co.
Yeah, there's nobody out there doing what we do. So not only did we elevate the game and make it harder or make it more adult friendly, we also wanted to add awesome gifts so that we could then weave into the story, use as evidence, use as clues, or just, you looking at a photo and then wait, I just got that in my box, just as a gift. So that it mixes a lifestyle box, like a lifestyle subscription box, with the game. And nobody else is doing that.
So ladies, if you could talk to us kind of about why did you guys decide to do this game for like an adult audience? And then also, can you kind of talk about why you went so deep into the realism part of it?
Well, murder's dirty. Murder's dark. Murder's creepy. You listen to a podcast and I spend half the time going, oh my God, that's so awful. Like, I don't want to play these games with my children. I want to play them with my girlfriends and I want to solve a crime. Mm-hmm. And so in my world, people swear and they make mistakes and they do stupid things. And I think that in order to create a game, because as actors, writers, directors, we know how to delve into a character and a story, right? That's what we do. And we wanted a game that did that you actually are sad that this person died. and you want to know what happened to them, and you want to know how it happened and why it happened. And maybe you don't feel so great at the end because you're like, that's still so sad, but it was a fun game. We didn't want a PG game. We wanted a rated R game because that's what I want to see when I watch something about murder.
I mean, the popularity of true crime podcasts, true crime shows, true crime everything is obvious. I mean, it's for a reason. It's exciting. It's everybody wants to like solve it, figure it out. So we are giving people like an actual opportunity to do what they're listening to on podcasts and watching on shows and Netflix. We're giving them they get to sit in the detective seat. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
I think ultimately you guys have nailed it. That's one of the things that we really have dug into is the research and the like just taking sort of like this inventory of what we want. And that's what you want to give people. You don't want to try to be something that you're not. This is what we love. This is what we're putting out there. And we know there are millions of people out there just like us because we listen to those podcasts and we have those conversations. And we love all games, right? Mel and I literally a couple of weeks ago were sitting 4 hours putting together a jigsaw puzzle. We're just like that. That's just who we are. We love a challenge and we love it both simple and hard. But this particular thing, we wanted to make it as challenging as we would want it to be and hope that other people are up to that challenge.
I think for me too, there's an element of one of the reasons I listen to all of this and I watch all these murder documentaries is there's an element of like, okay, how could I prevent this from happening to me? And that's why you get so deeply into the story. Like, okay, I know not to do X, Y, and Z because then, I'm not going to be like Brittany Drexel. My daughter will never be able to pretend to be somewhere and go to Florida and get taken off the street. Like that's never going to happen in my house because I've listened. I can't tell you how many times I say to my kids, no, you can't do that because I listen to too much true crime. So I want that in my story, in my game. Like, okay, this poor girl could have just done this and then she wouldn't have gotten murdered.
So one of the things that we really enjoyed about your game was the narrative. We really loved the storytelling, and we could tell that there were some very intentional moments and opportunities that you took to tell your story in a certain way. We would love some insight into how you handle the narrative process, especially given your backgrounds.
I think, Kristen was just saying we have revamped it several times where we thought the story would be XYZ, and then we realized, oh, no. That's giving them too much or that's not giving them enough. So we've been able to like manipulate the story. I mean, we've added twists in, like just randomly added twists in that we never would have seen at the very beginning so that we can make it a little more exciting, or that doesn't really make sense. So we kind of have to weave something else in. Oh my gosh, we just got rid of another character, or we just added another character. And we kind of just want to be able to tease you throughout the game, and I do love the fact that you do need everything and you need to know because there's always a lot of players and the players are, more than one dimensional. They have interactions with each other and you want to be able to follow it all. I mean, I think when we're watching true crime, my favorite thing is like when they recreate the timeline. Okay, where did they go? And who were they with? And blah, blah, blah. And that's what we want you to be able to do.
Similarly, how did your narrator, how did your detective get the evidence in a realistic way? And a lot of that does, from my perspective, come from listening to podcasts and knowing these stories and finding out how, when we were thinking about story 2, story 3, I literally sat down and just started listening to podcasts and going, oh, that's an interesting one. I've never heard that one. How can we take that and basically turn it into a different story, but use it as the skeleton?
Yeah. When we literally started this particular story, Snow Angel, it literally just starts with a seed, doesn't it? It's like, we were talking about the Masons and you would never know that was necessarily where this began. But that's how everything happens, right? It's like, this is cool. People know what it is. Let's start here. Now, where can we go from that? And just doing research on Skull and Bones and sort of like our presidential history and without trying to be too heady about anything, just sort of like allow it to envelop you in a way where pretty much all of us can relate to, student life and relationships and then how can we sort of like bring that in and make it, bite size instead of trying to get people like into sort of the history of the Masons, which, could be a snore for some. I mean, for me, I'd be like in heaven, but it could be a snore fest for some people. So ultimately our goal was to tell a story that people could relate to in some facet of their life, whether it's like, I had a really cruddy relationship with a guy and we broke up and, his family didn't like me, or my best friend maybe wasn't my best friend, or, this girl, used to talk crap about me in school and she would write horrible notes and be like, all of that stuff we have experienced in some way. So that's kind of where we pull a lot of our information from, is personal experience, because if we've experienced it, you have. We know you have.
So we talked about your narrative process a little bit. Can you go into explaining what you think about puzzles in your style of games, but specifically how you weaved in the puzzles with your narrative and how that kind of interacted?
We know that people who play these games also want to do puzzles. Like they like to do the ciphers. So the one that we had done together had the same kind of thing, decoding. That's not my bag. I was always left that to somebody else in the group, thank goodness. But some people really like that thing. Taylor can decode things like
that stupid game Wordle that's going around. Like I found a website that gives you all the back ones and I sit and do it. And the thing is, I get angry at myself if I can't guess it in like 3, because I'm obsessed. Like if you look at one of our clues has a crossword puzzle in it. That crossword, like you can answer them. Like it's real. I created a crossword puzzle. Like that creating of it is actually fun for me. Like doing the codes, even creating them is fun. Now, it's not for everyone.
But it's just something else for them to do rather than just solve the crime. If you want, you can also do these puzzles.
Well, and part of it was we wanted to make sure that the puzzles actually fit the narrative, because within sort of our story, we made sure that all of the puzzles had something to do with what was going on in the story. So the Greek, well, she's in Greek. We get the paper. It's on her schedule. The periodic table is from her science class. The Pigpen cipher is the Mason cipher. Like all of those things have to do with the story. They aren't just from some outside, like, oh, let's make them do this. They're indirectly involved with the story. So that's the thing. Like, we don't know how the other games are going to be outside of the storytelling from here forward. We have some things that we want that bring the player in, that it's actually sort of like outside play already coming forward, but they will not be like this, because this next story doesn't have Greek in it. So you will not be doing any sort of like, deciphering Greek at any point.
We think maybe as the game evolves, as our company evolves, maybe that each box will have less of the codes or more of the codes, depending on just what we hear from players.
I do think the story will dictate, because like we've said before, it's important to us that they feel authentic.
Makes sense.
So, a story about voodoo in Louisiana is not going to be the same as a story about a college campus. There won't be as many notes being passed and that sort of thing. And it's important to us, because our background is in storytelling, that our story is the most important aspect.
Can you tell us about kind of the social context of which you put your story in? I think this ties in a little bit with the realism, but we noticed a lot that you were bringing in very sometimes controversial issues into the game, but not really taking a side on them. Can you kind of just spell all that out for us?
I think basically things are based in truth. And we've gone over that quite a few times. Like, it is super, super important for us, for people to be able to relate to things. And whether it's like topical conversation that people are having, whether you're on campus or you're a parent watching your child go off to school, which we sort of see a little bit of both of those things within the storyline, is that it's things that we think could possibly happen or things that do happen. They do happen. And again, sort of these relationship dramas that, you know, we feel they are topical and they are things that we should be aware of. And I think that that helps with like personal investment in the game. So is it intentional? 100%. But are we trying to beat people over the head with something? Absolutely not. We want you to enjoy the game, but we do want you to feel like, wow, this is an experience. This could be mine. This could be my kids. This was me. So that's sort of where we were with that.
In general, you know, any story that ends in murder or crime is somebody's worst nightmare. And, you know, in this particular story, that deals a lot with things that could happen on a college campus. And unfortunately, those things happen to girls 9 times out of 10. There are some, of course, you know, fraternity issues and whatnot that happen to boys. But unfortunately, young women are victims 9 times out of 10 in these situations. And that hyper awareness, I think, as parents for us, you know, I have a girl, they have boys, but I'm terrified about her going out in the world at 20, 21, 22, because these things do happen.
We didn't even intend to make any statements about rape culture or anything like that. This is just life. It's just what happens. And so we are telling a story about this person and what happened to her. And it kind of, because it is our life, it becomes a social commentary.
Within the storyline, there is like, we sort of joke about our main character, like, oh, what, you know, some people will view her as being one thing, and we probably view her as another thing. Like, she's left home for the very first time, right? She's having experiences that she has never had before. And people will judge her based on those experiences. But the truth is, those are hers to have. And we as a society are constantly judging people based on our own feelings rather than their rights or their freedom to experience their life the way they want, which is so freaking awesome because we get to like say, here it is, like it, don't like it, we don't care. It's cool.
So can you tell us what's coming up next for Murder & Co? We played through Snow Angel. We know there's more on your website for games coming future, but can you kind of talk about them a little bit potentially?
Yes. So the next game we have, we're getting ready to start. We thought we would kind of go local, and it's this Hollywood, because we all live in Hollywood, but it's from the best part of Hollywood, which was the 1970s, which is also the worst time for crime. And it kind of
seriously, like, I don't know how people, you listen to, there were so many serial killers and murderers. I can't even imagine. Thank God there wasn't social media back then. Nobody would live here. It was just such a dirty time. So we have to, you know, we absolutely have to write about it.
It also gives us the opportunity to get really cool gifts that have to do with the 70s stuff.
That's one of the cool things about the 70s for us is the fact that it's like, it's a little filthy and it's super sexy, which is a great direction for us to go, being the 3 super dirty, super sexy women that we are.
You know, the PTA moms.
Spoiler!
Bloody 1970s Hollywood.
I'm the girl that literally walks around my house going, I know I'm a nerd. It's fine. But it's one of those things where, you know, it's whatever. Who cares? But we love this. That in the 70s are so rad. And in Hollywood, that sepia tone culture is exactly what we want to dive into. So we're super excited about the next game. And then, yes, of course, we have a third game on the back burner. We're hoping, fingers crossed, that we have, because of the experience that we have from building game 1, we're going to be able to sort of expedite the process because we learned so much from, I mean, even from having conversations with you, our beta testers, from ourselves, our constant like beating ourselves over our backs, basically going, this is wrong. This isn't good. This isn't good enough. This has got to be stronger. This storyline's got to be, this character needs to do this. Like, I wake myself up laughing at night because some of the conversations I have with these ladies are ridiculous. Like, if people overheard what we talked about, they would call the police. We talk about
if anything happens to any of our husbands, we are so screwed.
We're all going down.
Just based on our search
all
history
going to
alone.
jail.
Like, I don't, like, my husband joked about it. He's like, well, if something happens to me, you better be careful. Like, you're so...
Yeah, I literally wipe my laptop all the time because I'm fearful of like what people would find. It's horrible.
My husband just said, we should get you another life insurance policy, like, because something came in the mail. And I said, why? Why are we getting another life insurance policy? Do you have something planned? Don't even. I don't know about that. Let's get one on you. That's literally my first thought. My kids' first thought, they see a garbage can on the side of the road, they're like, dead body. Like,
Yeah.
See, you're learning. These are
Yep.
life skills that every child needs.
Absolutely.
And the last question, what influences you? What do you all enjoy playing? Can be anything, could be a podcast, true crime podcast that you love, other crime-based things, stuff that you think our audience would enjoy.
The truth is, I haven't had time to.
Yeah, right. Jigsaw puzzles are
yet
about
we
as
have
far
like
as I
every
go.
board game. We play a lot of board games as a family. So I'm trying, I know we play stupid things though, because my kids are young and silly. So we play like, my favorite, what's it called? Poetry for Neanderthals and stuff like that. The exploding kitten sort of thing is where my kids are at. The last couple of years though, we've been so deeply like into this that I haven't done a whole lot of that.
Me either.
So we right now we're playing Clash of Cultures. Do you know that game? It's like a world building game, sort of like Catan. It's way more advanced, but it's super, again, it's sort of like what we do because it is world building. It's just on a different sort of like playing field, but we really love board games. And a lot of times in my house, we do like what I was saying with Mel, like we'll just all throw a puzzle on the table and we'll assemble. Literally, sometimes I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, it's 4 hours. My husband and my son both really like to play games. And then we have some, so funny, sort of randomly, our next door neighbors who are a couple of years younger than us, they have little tiny kids. So it's great for them because they can sort of just abandon ship with their nanny and they come over and we'll make gin and tonics and order Chinese food and we'll play board games. I think it's such a great way to connect with friends and family members. I don't have any family around anywhere. So my friends are my family. So I don't want to sit and watch television or a movie with somebody. I want to sit down and laugh and use my mind, whether it's, my left or right brain. They use both a lot of times. And I love playing games, but you should check out Clash of Cultures. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, we did a virtual escape room as a family at the beginning of pandemic, like right before we started this. And I was like, oh, we're going to do this all the time. And then we got so into this that we sort of ignored that. But man, it was fun. I wish there was more of that out there to do as a family.
We did play one of the murder games. That's how we initially got into this. We liked it, but and then I've tried a different one that was, I didn't love. And I don't want to say those ones. So I don't really have any that I could recommend because I like Taylor said, there isn't a ton of time. And if we do play board games, it's like Yahtzee and Sorrow.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. Like Poetry for Neanderthals is big in my house because you get to bonk somebody over the head with a caveman. And that's just fun.
So you can purchase a subscription. You can buy boxes one at a time on our website, which is murderandco.com. We are also on Amazon and Cratejoy. We are so thankful and happy to be here today with you and to get your feedback. It's never going to get old. It's like a dopamine hit that is just never, ever going to get old. So we'll come on as many times as you'd let us.
We really appreciate you guys doing this with us and for us, because as you know, building a business from scratch is no joke. And we've talked about before, like it is an incredible feeling every single time somebody says, I want to buy your game. It makes you sort of want to like laugh and cry and jump up and down and run around the block, because this is something it becomes bigger than you, because now you're like going into people's homes and you're part of their life. So it's freaking awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it means, and it also just in general, the only way to get better is to get some criticism and to hear from other people. This was our experience, especially people, we're only just getting to know. So it's one thing for our friends to do it, or in the beginning, especially in a brand new company, you're going to be having your sister play the game, or your cousin, or your friend. It's hard to get a random person that isn't quite as invested in your life to give you the truth. And that's what we need. So it's really, really helpful. And we do appreciate it so much.
Every time we pack up one of these boxes, I go, oh my God, I would love to get this box in the mail. Like, I would die if I got this box in the mail and I got to play this game and I got these awesome gifts. And so basically that's what we want for everybody to experience.
Well, we just want to say so much to all three of you. Thank you so much for allowing us to play your game, for coming on the show. If you out there are listening and you would love to pick up one of these games, you can go to murderandco.com. Again, at the time of this recording, only 2 boxes are available in their physical format. But if you want to go ahead and play it, you can play through all aspects of the digital game. Pricing and all of that available on their website. Mm-hmm. Be sure, if you enjoyed it, leave them some good reviews. I know they have big dreams of getting this out, and we want to play a role in helping that get out to the mass public. Yeah. Zach, how can people help us out and get us going to the general public?
Wow, that's a great question. And I know all 3 answers to this. I write it every week. Well, so the first thing you can do, which is probably my favorite, I'm a little biased, is you can support us on Patreon. You can go on our Patreon and look up there, and you can see all 3 of the tiers that are currently available if you'd like to support us. We'd super appreciate it. We have some awesome patrons already, and we love getting to have the chats with them, and we've already played a game with one of them. So, I'm very excited to see what comes in the future from that, but we very much appreciate our patrons. The second thing is that you can go follow us on social media. You can go to Instagram at Puzzling Company and follow us on there, or go to Facebook at Puzzling Company and follow us on there. You'll see our social media posts when new episodes come up, as well as in the future, you might see some more things. And the last thing you can do, which is also super important, is you can go to wherever you listen to this, if it's Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Google, wherever, and you can leave us a 5-star review.
Do it. We love to hear your feedback.
Yes. And you can also obviously usually message us both through our contact at Puzzling Company email if you ever want to contact us about anything, or if you just want to, talk. We're always there.
I love it. I love it so much. Zach, do you know where we're going next week? What we're playing?
Yes. Next week's episode is actually on You Escape.
We love You Escape. We have been longtime patron members for them.
Yes.
Full disclosure, Nick is actually a business partner, and I would call him a friend. And so I'm super excited to get to have him on the show, for you all to get to meet him, because he's just a wonderful human being.
Well, he's not my partner, so I'm going all in. He better give me a good product, dang it.
Super excited to get to do that. Just another shout out, like, if you're not one of our patrons, you should think about doing it, because You Escape is one of those experiences that you would get to play with us as a part of your membership. Yep. No additional cost. And that's for our core members. So definitely think about doing that. But I think that's going to wrap us up this week. Again, here in the Deadbolt Mystery Society studio, which we're so excited to have that moniker for us now. We'll be coming at you next week. For Jared and Zach, this has been Puzzling Company.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Puzzling Company and online at puzzlingcompany.com. Check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, keep puzzling.
This has been Rogue Media Network Podcast.